Can you provide us with an update on Blount County's overdose statistics for 2023?
Yes, year-to-date, Blount County's overdose statistics are 165 overdoses with 34 deaths. That's as of the end of August. That is substantially lower than last year in 2022 and during the same time period where we had 179 overdoses with 42 deaths.
It is now legal in Tennessee to purchase Narcan over the counter. Do you believe that the availability of Narcan to the public is helping with the prevention of overdose deaths?
I think it plays a big part in it. Naloxone is available over the counter now without a prescription at pharmacies and stores. Naloxone is made available to first responders and law enforcement across the state through the state's ROPES program, which is Regional Overdose Prevention Specialists. It's made available free of charge, and they have coordinators located strategically across the state that make it available to us throughout the year as it's needed to provide to our patrol deputies and police officers that respond to calls. I will say additionally that while all of that is good, that it does sometimes constitute people skirting the edge or taking additional chances that they would normally take when they're using illegal drugs. So they don't think that they would have a saving device there in case they did overdose. So sometimes I think they are willing to take that additional chance.
Can you tell me about our current drug trends in Blount County and East Tennessee? What are your investigators seeing in Blount County right now?
So our primary focus in Blount County is heroin and fentanyl and methamphetamine. And as I refer to heroin, what I'm really referring to as heroin and fentanyl, because most of the times, more times than not, if we're dealing with a substance that we think is heroin, it's actually fentanyl. So we either get pure fentanyl or we're getting combined amounts of both. But those are definitely our primary focus in Blount County. When you're dealing with fentanyl, you're also dealing with synthetic fentanyls, all of the different analogs that these scientists or chemists are coming up with. And to date, there's been actually about 200 different synthetic fentanyls identified across the state of Tennessee. Most of those that we see, or some of those, should I say, that we've seen in Blount County are fluorofentanyl and acrofentanyl and carfentanyl and acetafentanyl. And what happens with these is they can be made in so many different forms. So you can find them in powder forms. You can find them in a pressed pill to make it look like an actual prescription pill. So when law enforcement finds a dosage unit of something, it may not necessarily be a prescription form of oxycodone. It may actually be a pressed fentanyl pill. Additionally, what happens with these synthetics is they will combine multiple different types of synthetics in one dosage unit or one substance. And most recently, one of the samples or representative samples that our investigators sent to the lab came back with actually 5 different types of drugs in one dosage unit. We had fentanyl was identified, 3 different types of synthetic fentanyls were identified, and xylazine was identified as another one of the drugs, which is the new and upcoming issue. So if you've got 5 substances in one different or one dosage unit, obviously that becomes problematic for the user. Xylazine is a non-opioid drug, so therefore it's naloxone resistant, and it makes it nearly impossible for a first responder or a person administering naloxone to reverse the side effects of an overdose if xylazine is actually in the drug that they took. Xylazine is a tranquilizer for large animals such as horses and cattle, so you can about imagine how strong it actually is.
I'm going to move on to a controversial subject, that of marijuana. We know that many people want to see it legalized in Tennessee for recreational use. What are we seeing in Blount County as far as marijuana? Is the distribution of marijuana a major problem in Blount County? And can you expand on some of the crime issues that this causes?
I can. I know that this is a very hot topic across the country, not just across the state of Tennessee. We know that a lot of states have legalized marijuana for various reasons, whether for medicinal use or just across the board. We also know that some states have legalized all drugs, whether it be heroin or fentanyl or cocaine or crack cocaine, and we can look at what other states do and we can learn from that. I think that the collateral damage that all of those states have seen should be enough just within itself to tell us that it's not a good idea to legalize it. Because the reality of it is marijuana is illegal. It's illegal because of its addictive properties. And it has been legal for years for medicinal purposes. And an example of that is Marinol. Marinol is a drug that is used in one case, or one example, cancer patients for anti-nausea medication. It's very expensive, it's very effective, and it's been legal for that purpose and used for that purpose for many, many years. So to ask for marijuana to be legalized for medicinal purposes doesn't really make sense to me, because it already is used for medicinal purposes. The difference is you can't get high from it. It has medicinal properties, and it helps the sick to heal and to have an appetite and to eat and to get nourishment. But again, you can't get high from it. One of the cases that we worked years ago in Blount County was a DEA agent was testifying in one of our drug cases, and during the cross-examination, the DEA agent was put on this big platform by the defense attorney that working for a federal agency, that he was used to seeing large amounts of drugs and various forms of packaging during interdiction stops, and large vessels and aircrafts full of these different types of drugs. And once the defense attorney finished putting him on this big pedestal, he alluded to the fact that the drug case that he was testifying in Blount County was small in nature, because it was a smaller amount of drugs that a federal agent was used to. And I thought that the answer that agent gave that day couldn't have been any more perfect. And his response was, I feel like drugs in any amount should be unacceptable. So if you really break that down, I think that as society, the more that we are willing to accept the small changes over time, years from now become big problems. And I think that's what you've seen in a lot of these states, is they've been willing to accept small changes, and now it's become a big problem for them. And I applaud Tennessee for taking a stand and not becoming one of those states, because I always refer back to a statement that Robert Frost once made, and that's never take a fence down until you remember why it was put up.
What are the majority of the illicit drugs that we are seeing in Blount County coming from?
So the vast majority of heroin and fentanyl, if you will, and methamphetamine, they're all coming from the larger cities, obviously originating from Mexico, but larger cities such as Nashville, Atlanta, Detroit, and now Knoxville has become a major distribution point for those other cities. Marijuana comes from primarily the West Coast, California specifically, that we've worked most of our cases from, but it is made available to Tennessee and our area from all of the states that have legalized it.
In February of this year, TBI partnered with multiple districts, including the 5th Judicial District in East Tennessee, with a focus on disrupting the drug trafficking pipeline between Detroit, Michigan, and East Tennessee. What kind of results are we seeing? From your perspective, is the 313 initiative making a difference?
Sure. So the number one most contributing factor or biggest tool that we can have in law enforcement is communication. So to be part of any type of collaborative effort, especially an effort like the 313 initiative, has been overwhelmingly beneficial. There are numerous agencies that participate in the 313 initiative, and it gets its name, 313, as being identified as the area code for Detroit. The agencies that are involved, and I hate to even name a few because just in fear of leaving some of them out, but the ones that I can name off of the top of my head is obviously TBI, because they are kind of the nexus agency or the coordinators of putting everything together. But TBI, the Drug Enforcement Administration, Homeland Security, Knoxville Police Department, Knox County Sheriff's Office, Blount County Sheriff's Office, Sevier County Sheriff's Office, the 4th, the 5th, the 7th Judicial Drug Task Forces, and that just names a few of them. But the effort that they put into the 313 initiative, whether it be short-term investigations or long-term investigations or merely interdiction, has just had such an impact on our community and all of the communities that are within the jurisdictions that these different agencies are responsible for. The inception of the 313 began in December of 2022, so just shy of 9 months now, just shy of 9 months. The seizures of drugs from that initiative to date are 71 pounds of methamphetamine, 39 pounds of heroin fentanyl mix, 118 firearms, some of which were actually stolen from other jurisdictions, 5 pounds of cocaine and crack cocaine, a mixture of both, and nearly 200 arrests. So it's been definitely beneficial and led to substantial seizures.
Blount County's population has grown substantially over the years. Since 2013, Blount County has added about 10,000 people. And since COVID hit in 2020, it's spiked even more. Do you think that the growth in Blount County's population has had any impact on the number of narcotics cases investigators are working?
Obviously, I think that any time that the population grows in any area, it will cause an increase in calls for service. Part of those calls for service obviously encompass drugs or may be contributed to the use of drugs. But overall, I think COVID changed the way that society lives. I think it changed the way that they work. Obviously, people stayed at home. People who were used to going to an office environment to work still stay at home. They remain at home and operate from a computer, or instead of going to a meeting, they go to a Zoom meeting. Instead of being employed at a corporate office, they're self-employed through means of the internet. I think social media plays a big part in a lot of that too, as far as drug trends and the different things that our young adults and kids in school see across the country and see in other areas. But staying at home during COVID, I think that it absolutely had an impact on society as a whole, and absolutely Blount County, as our population grew, I think that it increased the volume of stuff that we investigate.
How do you think COVID in 2020 affected Blount County's overdose numbers, and has it trended up or down since then?
So since COVID, our numbers have trended down. In 2021, we had 397 overdoses with 64 deaths. That was a huge number. It was, and I think a lot of that was attributed to people were at home. I think there was a lot of depression going on at the time, and anxiety, and some people just thought that there was, maybe no other place to turn. But at the same time, as things changed and enforcement got better, our collaborative effort with community organizations and treatment and that type of thing, I think that as a whole, I think the numbers during the last 3 years have trended down, and those numbers from 397 and 64 deaths in 2021 decreased in 2022 to 261 overdoses and 52 deaths. Year to date in 2023, those numbers are still consistently going down with 165 overdoses and 34 deaths. Again, there's a lot that goes into the reduction of those numbers. Enforcement action by law enforcement obviously is one of those. We find people distributing illegal narcotics, and we arrest that individual and get them off the street and incarcerate them. The 313 initiative has obviously made a huge impact over the last 9 months, contributing to that. Education and treatment through Recovery Court and Be Aware Blount is a contributing factor to that. Also, faith-based organizations that have facilities that help with treatment and recovery. Proactive activities like our collaborative effort with the Drug Enforcement Administration. 2 times a year we have a national drug take-back event, and one in the spring and one in the fall, where we collect more unwanted or unused prescription pills in Blount County than most any other county across the state of Tennessee. We also have a drug drop box located in the 24-hour lobby of the Justice Center, where people can come at any time, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and dispose of unwanted medication that doesn't allow it to remain in the home and accessible to kids. And then obviously the issuance of naloxone to law enforcement. They're equipped to carry naloxone and administer that opioid antagonist to an overdose victim during overdose calls. The sheriff's office here in Blount County, they have trained several of our deputies to be emergency first responders, so they are trained to administer additional first aid during these overdose calls. So I think that is in large part a contributing factor as well.
And finally, let's end this interview on a positive note. What are some of the things the 5th Judicial Drug Task Force is taking moving forward to help alleviate some of the illicit drug issues that we are experiencing?
So you've heard me talk about communication as the number one tool that we use in law enforcement. And with communication comes relationships. One thing that I think that the Sheriff's Office and our Judicial Drug Task Force in Blount County has done over the years is we have built relationships with our other agencies that we work with. I think we've built strong collaborative efforts through them on working cases and taking a proactive stance against drug dealing in Blount County. One of the relationships we have is with the Tennessee Dangerous Drug Task Force. They are in the process of trying to make available to us a presumptive testing device that will allow us to test or do a presumptive test of identifying drugs that we seize or come across on the street. What this will do for us, it'll give us the ability to identify what drug we're actually dealing with and not have to send this drug to the lab, which will help the lab reduce the number of exhibits that they're having to analyze on an annual basis. And it'll help the investigators know what type of drug that they're actually dealing with. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I mean, obviously, we're all overwhelmed with the growing numbers of crimes and the growing numbers of drugs because every time we turn around, a new drug is coming into existence. And identifying those is hard. So TBI's done a great job. They're just overwhelmed and are running behind. We're also in the process of constructing a new drug task force office in Blount County. the important thing about the construction of that building is it provides an environment for all of these different agencies and participating agencies to work under one roof together. Again, it creates communication. Within that, we have other agencies that come and work under the same roof. We have TBI, again, DEA, Homeland Security, the U.S. Marshal Service. And anytime you get all of those agencies under one roof, you're going to have more communications and share information with one another and all have one objective, and that's just to make Blount County a safer place. And by providing that building, you're actually providing a workspace for all of these investigators to come and work, and it's free law enforcement to Blount County. And I think it's important to note that by statute, the Drug Task Force is allowable to be created, and it's allowable to be created by the District Attorney General in that judicial district. It's not a requirement. It's allowable, and I want to stress that. And in Blount County, our District Attorney General and our Sheriff and our two police chiefs have chosen to have a judicial drug task force, proactive enforcement, to try to get ahead of the curve. And I think that speaks volumes for our leaders in Blount County, is to do something that they're not required to do. They do it because they want to make Blount County a safer place to be.